So, when you think of scandal in Canadian politics, what parties do you think of? The Conservatives and the Liberals, right? Well, the NDP lately seem bent and determined to make it into the Wikipedia article for Canadian political scandal. And I have feelings, so buckle up. I got a message from one of my followers, someone whose name I've seen pop up in my comments, likes, and shares for a good while now. So this wasn't just a random person who was like, hey, let's look for just anyone who talks about Canadian politics on TikTok. They sent me an article from The Rover, which is reporting that people connected with the federal NDP have been doing some things that you would not expect from the fucking federal NDP. According to The Rover, they've reviewed more than 80 screenshots of emails and private messages, as well as spoken to people who have been dealing with what we're going to call not okay behavior from NDP candidates, as well as organizers who seem to be participating in a coordinated effort to pressure the people behind SmartVoting.ca into, I guess they wanted them to lie to us? Like, what's the point of going after smartvoting.ca? For those unfamiliar, they take a bunch of results from different polls and they aggregate them so that you get a little graph that shows you what it looks like the election in your riding is like and how close everything is. Particularly, this whole thing was birthed out of the anyone but conservative movement, which only exists because we have three parties that are somewhere left of center in Canadian politics, and we have the Conservatives on the right-hand side. We technically have the PPC, but they're a rounding error. Now, the Liberals, they've historically been more in the middle, but quite frankly, they've been moving to the left in some good ways lately. And under Carney, they seem to be not doing the normal fence-sitting thing, but they've actually been taking things that the Conservatives say that are actually popular with normal, not crazy Canadians and saying, sure, that's what everybody wants. We live in a democracy. We're going to do that. And the funny part is the Conservatives are just left with like racism and craziness. It's a good strategy. And then on the left-hand side, they've got a number of things that are impressively left-wing. They're basically doing socialized education for people who want to move into the trades, in part because Canada needs more tradespeople. But that is something that, like, growing up, that was not the sort of thing that you thought the Liberals would do. That was the sort of thing the NDP would push for. They also have plans for housing that are building on work that they were already doing with the Housing Accelerator Fund, and it's by far the most well-developed housing plan that any of the parties have talked about. The NDP have kind of stated some good ideas, but they have no real plans to speak of. It seems like everyone knew this election was coming up, but the NDP just didn't do their homework. The NDP are not getting wiped out in this election because of the people at Smart Voting. The NDP are doing terrible in this election because they didn't plan for this election, and the people who write the NDP's speeches are writing for an audience that does not exist. I don't think the NDP understands who votes for them. So why are the NDP picking fights with a website that's goal is supposed to be pretty well aligned with the NDP's interests? Not everything that doesn't work for the NDP or Conservatives is secretly bankrolled by the Liberals. To be clear, I'm currently bankrolled by EI. Well, actually, right now, my claim ended, and they said that I could do another claim, but my doctor's, I'm probably going back to work very soon, so I may honestly be being funded by no one right now. I don't know if that's going to get sorted out. I might just be like, 3 weeks without pay. And so why is the federal NDP picking fights with a website that is supposed to be pretty aligned with the NDP's interests? Sadly, I think it's about money. Nobody has said that. Smart Voting isn't accusing them of this. I don't even know if Smart Voting even thought of this. But I remember hearing a while ago about how Canada has some public funding for our political parties. According to the Canadian Encyclopedia.ca, we have two forms of state funding to political parties and candidates. Parties that received either 2% of the national vote or 5% of the vote in the districts in which they ran candidates can get back 50% of the money they spend. Candidates who received at least 10% of the vote receive 15% of the election expense limit in their district. If the candidate spent at least 30% of the limit during the election, the reimbursement increases to 60% of what the candidate spent. I want to talk to you about what it's like to deal with someone who won't accept no for an answer, because that's what's been happening here. And you know what's worse than dealing with someone who won't accept no for an answer? When that person is someone you previously thought was safe, or is connected to an organization that you thought was safe. When that person represents a big part of an organization that you identify with, when they come after you, it hurts. It doesn't just hurt your feelings. because feelings happen in your brain, which is a physical part of you, and your brain reacts to the reality around it. It causes physiological reactions. Your body produces stress hormones, your muscles tighten up. If you're someone like me with an autoimmune disorder, you can end up with all kinds of unexpected symptoms. It steals the time, it steals joy. Food doesn't taste as good as you remember. You just can't get happy sometimes. Some people can't stop eating, and some people don't eat at all. It just you don't feel like you until it stops. And no one should have to get used to that feeling. Now, there are legal definitions for the word harassment, and to be clear, I don't know exactly who did what. I'm just going based off this article, but the article does seem well researched and professionally presented. And I want to point out that there are a lot of things that people can say and do that are unethical, but not illegal. As someone who didn't get to come out of the closet until I was into my 20s, pressuring people to be dishonest is not okay. Nobody should feel that they can't be honest about what they believe, and they sure as hell shouldn't be expected to try and change existing data because it isn't data that you like. Nobody should have to choose between feeling like they're an honest and authentic person and feeling respected by people or organizations that they've trusted. J.B. Burrows from Smart Voting in the article recounts a conversation with George, I want to say Sewell, a strategist who has worked with the NDP. And apparently, they've said, if you're in this game, you have to take some heat. The people from Smart Voting are not in your game. They are not working for a candidate. They've been doing a better job of keeping the Conservatives out of power than the NDP have. And just to be clear, they're allowed to have biases if they do have them, but I haven't seen any. Historically, I've had biases towards the NDP. As far as I can recall, I have only ever voted NDP when they've been an option. There may have been a time, like right when I became eligible to vote, where I voted Conservative. I honestly don't remember. I think I didn't actually get to vote in that election because I was away at school and so not in my riding. I would have made bad choices back then, but I don't think that I actually got to vote in that election. But so what if they were biased towards the Liberals? Why are the NDP so fucking busy skating towards where the puck was months ago? It's not Smart Voting's fault that no one's looking to vote for you. Now, if you're familiar with my videos, you might be thinking, is the chicken going to talk about narcissism? No. A lot of the overline behavior in this, it feels very cluster B, but it's all happening behind closed doors. I don't know who is at the root of this behavior. I don't know how many people involved are saying and doing things over the line because that's who they are, versus acting as obedient flying monkeys. In many cases, you can get otherwise psychologically healthy people who just want to please other people, who can be kind of wound up and then turned against people, and you end up with some very nice and kind people saying and doing truly unkind things, and that's very unfortunate. I would like to believe that's why the numerous NDP candidates who were attacking the team at Smart Voting were doing and saying what they said. But either way, it should not be continuing. If Jagmeet were to ask me for advice, not that he's going to, my advice would be to privately reach out to the people at Smart Voting, ideally by email, and just keep it short. Don't make any excuses. State that you understand this should not have happened. Don't explain why it happened. They're not idiots. They understand that you wanted to win. They probably also understand that there were financial pressures on you to do it. Don't make excuses for yourself or anyone else. Say sorry, or as close to sorry as a lawyer can get. Let them know that you've instructed all the candidates and everyone else associated with the party to not reach out to them. And let them know that if anyone does reach out to them in a manner that is unhelpful, you'd like to know about it. But otherwise, for the rest of the campaign, it's a good idea to not try and iron this out. They'll understand that you're in the middle of brutally losing your campaign, so you don't have to have time right now to come and work things out in person. Let them know that after the election is over, if they're open to it, you'd like to figure out what happened and resolve things, and also clean house on your end to make sure that this doesn't happen again. But this should have never happened. You should not have people working with you who think that it's okay to try and exert that kind of pressure on independent sources that are just trying to educate people about the democratic process. I don't care how much money the party was set to lose. This is not the sort of thing that anyone expects from the NDP. We don't even expect this sort of thing from the Liberals on their worst days. Wouldn't be totally surprised from the Conservatives, though. But you guys are supposed to be so much better than the Conservatives. You do not go after volunteers. You do not go after people who are working hard to keep their country as safe as possible because they can't trust their officials to do it. This website specifically is working to compensate for the fact that you and Justin Trudeau couldn't come to an agreement to make this website unnecessary. To be clear, until a few weeks ago, that choice to not come to an agreement nearly put Harper 2.0 in as PM and nearly gave the Conservatives an overwhelming majority. So either be better or disband the party because the new Democratic Party should never be like this.